Okay, welcome to 1FG Archives here on YouTube. This is Just Chatting Volume 10. We're going to be continuing my top 25 games of all time, and we are at numbers 3 and 2. Let's get started. It has been a long journey. I know I've been making these videos for pretty much all my Just Chatting ones have been either just kind of quick reviews or we've been going through my top 25 games. So, it's been a fun journey. We're gonna get to number one on the next episode, but so far I've written reviews for both of these games today for 3 and 2, and I'm just gonna go through them. So. If you go back to my Facebook page, you can actually see what all these are. I've actually already listed, well, not listed, but I've given away my top games of all time through my previous videos, actually my Twitch streams and everything. But nonetheless, we're going to continue on with number 3, and that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is the original arcade game. I'm going to go ahead and read the review for this that I wrote back a few months ago. And yeah, so I'm just going to read it straight from directly from my phone here, which I have all these reviews from my top 10 were back in on my phone, so I've held on to them for a while. But anyway, so we've arrived at my personal top 3 games of all time. At number 3, my game choice is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the arcade. I have always been a fan of the Ninja Turtles, especially the late 80s cartoon when it was originally released. The modern stuff, not so much, to be honest. So back in 1989, every Thursday after school, I would walk to my mom's work, which just so happened to be right next to where I attended school. Once she clocked out for the day, she would meet with her coworkers and other friends at the pizza place down the street. Why did I tag along? Every week she would have me a $5 bill and would let me play games at the mini arcade there while she sat and chatted with her friends for a couple hours. From pinball, racing, and even classics like Galaga and Pac-Man, this place was great for gamers of all ages. There were always kids and young adults there due to the fact that there were 3 schools right by it. A lot of times I'd see some of my friends show up as well for a game or two while I was there. But man, nothing could prepare me for the fall of that year when I walked into this place and saw nothing but kids and adults completely crowding the entire arcade. Second, sorry about that. Crowding the entire arcade around one particular game that I could clearly see was a new game that I hadn't seen before. I couldn't even see the game screen much as there were so many people, but what I did see was the title of it, in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. After about the first hour or so, the crowd began to dissipate, and to my liking, I was able to finally check out the game itself. I also had my pocket of change ready to go if I ever saw an opening to play. I checked out the layout of the game cabinet, 4 positions to represent the 4 turtles. The game is essentially a beat 'em up with enemies coming from both sides and even some that come up from the ground. All I could see on the screen were foot soldiers galore and all 4 turtles trying to make their way through them. I just couldn't stop staring at this thing. I wanted to play it so badly. And I saw an attack and jump buttons as the only 2 buttons needed to play. However, I was mad because my mom was ready to leave for the night and I hadn't gotten a chance to play it yet. I tried very hard to plead my case, but unfortunately I had to wait until next week to try it. The wait, however, was much worth it because when I came back from the following Thursday evening, to my surprise there wasn't a soul in the arcade, and I had the game all to myself and now $10 worth of quarters in my pocket, and thus began my experience with TMNT. Of course, the biggest question for me was, which character would I choose first? Donatello has always been my favorite. Not sure why to this day, to be honest. So that is the coin slot I dropped my first quarter in. One thing to note is that when you are 8 years old and start getting your butt kicked at a video game, your immediate response is generally to pound the hell out of the buttons like it would make a difference, right? Well, apparently I was literally pounding the crap out of those buttons and had my mom come into the arcade and ask me to press them gently or I'd have to stop playing. Needless to say, that warning lasted all but 2 seconds, and right after she had left the arcade area, she had to walk right back in and pull me away from the game. I was so mad, but I deserved it. After we had some pizza, my mom asked me if I had calmed down, in which I responded a sarcastic yes. So she allowed me to back in and play some more, but I learned my lesson. At this point, there were only three. There were already three other people at the game playing, but Raphael was still available. So I decided to join, and I asked to join, and they happily allowed me to do so. I made sure, even though I was still getting beat up badly, I was carefully pressing those buttons so as not to be removed from the arcade again and be an embarrassment. We did make it to the final level, the Technodrome, but when we got to the final bosses, my teammates and including myself were out of quarters. Yep, I had spent all $10 worth, probably also because I was giving away some to my teammates so they could continue to play with me. I was devastated. We could not finish the game, but the OMG factor had already settled in for me with the experience lasting for a lifetime. This was the game I'd be playing every week until I could beat it, whether by myself or with others. I absolutely loved this game. It was simple yet challenging, fast yet it could be taken slow. The fact that it was up to 4 players just added to the overall fun. I even made some new friends from playing it as well. When they finally removed it from the arcades for other games months later, I felt like I had lost a best friend. There wasn't any other game I was interested in playing and that was there. The following couple weeks, I actually had stopped going with my mom on Thursdays. Every now and then, I would go just to see what was new there, but nothing for the longest time could fill that void that I now had in me. Sure, I had my games at home too, and was super stoked when they released TMNT 2, the arcade game on the NES, but it just wasn't the same as the original arcade classic, which I wanted to play again. In fact, it wasn't until the past 10 years ago that I was finally able to play it again on emulation. That brought back all these memories and then some. Today, when you find me playing TMNT for the arcade, you'll see that smiling 8-year-old boy who was just loving life so much. So why is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the arcade at number 3? Let's be honest here, this game just did everything right for me. The music, the action, the boss battles, sounds, graphics, they were all pretty darn perfect for a 1989 beat-em-up. Throw in the fact that it included the Ninja Turtles was just icing on the cake. Don't forget about the replay factor too. Even as I'm writing this, I had just finished a playthrough and will be playing another shortly after. However, there are still 2 more games that impacted me more, but for now, my number 3 game of all time is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the arcade. And that's just something that I have to go back on more and more about just the overall arcade experience. If you go back and watch my previous just chatting one with the Q&A session, I would know one of the questions that was asked me is what is one of the games, or what are 5 arcade games that I would put inside of like an arcade, a mini arcade. This one right here is one of them. I did mention it. I did mention there is a combo that has the TMNT 1 and TMNT 2 Turtles in Time. Obviously, I didn't care for the second one as much as this one here, but it's just the replay factor. As I said, everything about this game just brought everything together. Playing with people, just up to 4 people, and I was, even if sometimes I was playing alone at the arcade, people would still just be sitting there and watching me. Especially as I got used to how to fight the bosses, how to go through the levels and everything. People would just sit there and you'd either watch you or they just go up and ask you, "Hey, can I join you? Do you mind if I play with you?" And that's the kind of factor that that I really liked about this game. Growing up as a kid, finding out, say, "Hey, I'm not so good at this thing, but I'd be happy to welcome some help," type of thing. And the only funny thing about that is the more characters you add to the game, that means more enemies are going to appear on the screen. So you're not really helping much if you add more people. I can remember when there was a place in it was called Malibu Grand Prix. I can remember they had the difficulty set on that sucker to maximum, and they were in the Technodrome in the final, like after you go down that platform, elevator, whatever you want to call it. Um, there was just literally four turtles and just foot soldiers all over the screen. You couldn't even tell where the heck anybody was. It was just that flooded with enemies and stuff. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it, and especially when you get to like Shredder and he duplicates himself so many times to the number of turtles there are. Oh man, it was just crazy just to watch all of that. I'll never forget about that moment either because someone had to leave because they ran out of quarters. So I just walked right up there and joined in on the fun. I don't care if it was the end of the game, if it's the beginning of the game, whatever. I wanted to play that sucker, and I'm like that every time. If I see it at an arcade, chances are I'm gonna play it. When I go to California Extreme every year, they have this game there. I am definitely going at least one playthrough of it, and that's just because of the nostalgia factor and just the simple fact of how much fun it is to play this game. So, but anyway, so enough about that one. So I'm going to move on to my number two game of all time, and that is The Guardian Legend. Yes, this is the one on the NES, also on Famicom. It's this both versions, Japanese and US, are the same games. There's nothing different about them whatsoever. Um, this is a top-down, kind of a Legend of Zelda-esque, type of game. Only your protagonist is an android that can change into a ship, and it's like half top-down, adventure type of thing, and then you go into these dungeons called corridors it turns into a shoot 'em up, basically. But you have a heart meter or an energy meter instead of like one shot kills you, like so, and all that. But I'll get more into that into the review here as I read it. So it's down to my personal top two games of all time. At number two, it is The Guardian Legend. Even though The Guardian Legend was released back in 1989, our family didn't actually purchase the game until mid 1991. In fact, the only reason my brothers picked it up is because they were looking for something new to play. The funny thing is, I was still very much into the first Metroid game at the time, so I wasn't interested in playing anything new. Ironically, when they started playing the Guardian Legend, I was nowhere to be found. I was too busy playing games on my Game Gear until they were finished playing on the NES so I could get back into playing more Metroid. However, one day I decided to go ahead and take a look at what this game was about. So I sat down on the couch and watched for a little bit, and my goodness, within the first 5 minutes, I was begging for a chance to play it. But my brother told me once he finally beat it, I could give it a try. It was about 2 weeks later before that happened, and once again, much like the other games in my top 10 list, the OMG factor settled in right away. Nothing to prepare me for what I had just gotten myself into. The Guardian Legend was put out by Broderbund. This is the same company that brought us timeless classics such as the Myst series or the original Prince of Persia on the Apple II. The story is very simple. Become a one-man army to stop an alien invasion from reaching Earth. The protagonist is a female android who is human-like, with a main gun to shoot with and an array of special weapons, but also transforms into a spaceship that can use those special weapons. Sounds pretty cool, right? Absolutely. The main objective of the game is to locate and beat 10 main corridors on the planet Naju and activate its self-destruct mechanism. Sounds simple, right? Not by any means here. In fact, just getting through the first level of the game took me several attempts before actually making it onto the actual planet. That being said, this just made me want to play it even more, even as challenging as it was. The overall gameplay resembles the screen by screen top down format, much like the original Legend of Zelda on the NES. The difference is that the dungeons, or corridors in this case, are top down shoot 'em ups. Compared to other games in the genre, shoot 'em ups, that is, the Guardian Legend has a life bar, rather than dying when you get struck by a single bolt or shot. As you defeat enemies, they can drop health items, some of which can also restore your chip or special weapon ammo. Speaking of special weapons, each one has 3 power levels that increase both strength and size as you collect more of the same one. There is even one called enemy erasers, I call them smart bombs, which when used will make the screen flash and destroy all the weak enemies on the screen. The only downside to that is you only get 20 per item capsule you find, and they don't spawn very often. So but you can carry up to 255 of them. I just think it's ironic that it's 255. It's like, where else have we seen 255? Metroid, 255 missiles. Just saying. To find these upgrades, you will need to explore the overworld and either find capsules or defeat mini-bosses to obtain them. Other items you can find are red and blue landers, which will either increase your maximum chip or give you an extra heart to your life bar. Your score is also important in this game too, as at certain point values you will gain an automatic blue lander, which really does help in the end. There are even shops you can enter to purchase an item in exchange for some of your chip. The last of the items include gun and shield upgrades to help you deal more damage and shoot faster, or give you more protection so that you take less damage when getting hit. The overall map of the Guardian Legend contains the main overworld, which is used like a bridge to all 10 of the other areas. Each area has 2 corridors in it. One that needs to be completed as part of the self-destruct mechanism, and it's the ones in red, and the others, gray, are side quests more or less. At the end of each corridor is a boss battle. Some are very simple and easy to get through, but there are others that will truly test your skills. To this day, there are 2 to 3 bosses that still have me sweating a little every time. Once you defeat the boss of a red corridor, or an area sometimes 2 areas, you get a key that gives you access to the next 1 or 2 areas of the game. When all the red corridors are beaten, you unlock Corridor 21. This level is the self-destruct mechanism, and once completed, the corridor once you complete it, the corridor is a gauntlet of bosses you fought throughout the game. Nodule will be destroyed. However, there is one small final spaceship level that has the final boss, which is no easy task for sure. If you are successful, you will be remembered as the Guardian Legend. The Guardian Legend, I must say, is pretty much spot on with the sounds, graphics, and has an amazing soundtrack. There can be a bit of flickering at times when the screen starts getting cluttered with enemies, and has a little slowdown as well. But other than that, the game runs very smoothly, which makes playing it much easier. The only issue I really had with the game was the password system. Personally, I don't use it anymore, but if I had to, it is just a monster to have to enter 32 random characters when I wanted to continue where I left off. The only password that really should matter, though, is the password TGL in all caps, which will let you go through the game with just the corridor levels and skipping the entire exploration of the overworld. Be warned, though, I have attempted the TGL password many times. I've only been successful twice in the many times I've attempted it. It is flat out difficult, and that's all I'm going to say about that, as I have rage quit over it too much. However, if you are able to beat the game the way, hats off to you. Another aspect I forgot to mention was that while some of the corridors are tough, there are also some mini-bosses in the overworld that are just as bad, if not worse than the ones that are inside the corridor. Also, much like your weapons having 3 different power-up levels, some bosses have 2 or 3 colors that are more or less challenging based on the color that they are. Generally, green is easy, blue is medium, and red is difficult. Man, there's so much going on with this game to describe. I'm running out of breath here. Jumping back into my first playthrough, I can remember never really getting lost as the map told you where you needed to go to progress further, but I explored everywhere before actually jumping into an actual corridor. At times, this may have been a bad idea, as I'd run into a mini-boss who would completely kick my butt and would have to respawn at the last checkpoint. While you always have the option to avoid those battles, I never walked away and took them on anyway, which is probably why it took me over a week to finally get close to finishing the game. In fact, I recall having to be pulled away from the game a couple of times because I was raging badly. But in the end, when it came when it came to take on the final boss, the third time was a charm for me, and when I watched it explode, I raised my arms in triumph and sat back on the couch and took everything in. I had just finished an absolute masterpiece of a game. So why is The Guardian Legend at number 2? I'll be honest, my top two games are so close to each other that if a million votes were cast, only one vote would separate the two of them. I just love this game so much. Yeah, the story might be atypical somewhat, including the relatively lackluster ending, but it's the game itself that set the bar so high for me. Another factor about this game is that even to this day, while I can complete a no death run on it regularly, it still makes me sweat a little every time I play it because there are some really challenging parts to it, even for a veteran. It's an action adventure, a shoot 'em up all in once. It makes the replay value so high, I just have so much fun every time I play it, including the little bit of nervousness. I will even catch myself just stopping at certain areas of the game just to listen to the music of that area. Indeed, as like the rest, there is another game that tops it all, but for now, my personal second game of all time is The Guardian Legend. And this is so true about some of the bosses because, and the funny thing is two of them are the exact same ones. They're just in different areas of the game. They're like round creatures, and they shoot out little tentacles at you and bullets too. And when you go to battle the green one, if you touched any of their tentacles, it takes away like four of your hearts, and it's just, it hurts. If you hit a bullet, it takes away one heart, and you're just trying to move your ship and everything, and trying to avoid all this stuff, and it gets tough really quick. And then the problem is in the forest area, when you get to the blue version of the same boss, it just will slide them down at you at random times. You never know when it's going to slide one at you. And when it does that, it as I said, just much like the other one, it hits you hard. I mean, it doesn't at that point you'll have a couple more shields, so you'll take less damage, but it's still a very, very tough boss. So not only you have the tentacles that it's sliding at you at random, and then you're also having bullets that are coming at you too. So it's a really tough boss. If you go back in my videos for NES and everything, and some for Famicom, I have played both versions. I do own both versions, the NES the and the Famicom version. So they're, as I said, they're the exact same game. So there's nothing different about them. But overall, the game itself. I mean, 90 minutes if you know what you're doing, but again, if you got to get to these bosses, it just makes it. I still, every time I play them, as I said, I can struggle against these bosses, and I have on stream actually died a couple times because of them. As much as I know the game inside and out, I still die against them. And that's not even, and that's even with me trying. It's tough. And that's one of the reasons why I love this game so much, and why it's so high on my list, just because of what it did, what it provided. Broderbund was very good at what they put out. They backed their stuff very, very much, and especially being a fan of the actual Myst game. I don't know if you've ever played it before, but it's when you found out what the solution was to the entire game, you can beat the game in like 5 minutes. It's crazy, but overall, I said just the experience of what you could do in the game. It's just this game is kind of like along the same boat. You constantly just want to explore everywhere. Make sure you don't miss anything because you want to get your weapons powered up. You want to get the maximum shield so that you take a lot less damage, so you can go through these corridors and stuff. So it just brought everything together all at once. I said, yeah, action adventure, shoot 'em up, exploration, it's all there in this game. It kind of leaves me on the board of like the ROM hack Metroid Rogue Dawn. You have the option to just go around the whole game, the whole map as much as you can, find new abilities, find new weapons, that kind of stuff. This game is just, it's all there too. It kind of makes you think what my number one could be if you really think about it. And I'm just going to tell you right now, it's much similar to what this game is. You can probably figure it out what it is. But for these two games here, there's just the simple fact of what they were able to do for the gaming community. For myself, I know the Guardian Legend wasn't as big as the TMNT arcade game, I mean, far from it. But if you've never heard of the Guardian Legend, I strongly suggest checking it out. The sad thing is they never made a sequel to it. Um, it's okay. The game didn't really need a sequel. I think it was perfectly fine the way it is. Maybe it might need a little remaster or something like that. Like it just needs some touch ups or something like that. Give it some modern day, touch to it graphically. But even so, I don't need it. I can play this game for years to come and still be satisfied every single time I play it. It never gets old, just like TMNT does. I could play this and I'll be smiling every single time I play it just because they're just so much fun. Well, anyway, but that concludes this episode. Just a reminder, you can check me out on facebook.com/oneforsakengaming, twitch.tv/oneforsakengaming, and of course, right here at One of G Archives on YouTube. The next Just Chatting video, we will be revealing my #1 game of all time. So I'm going to be recording some more content in the next few days, and I'll be uploading it here. And so that's it for this one, and we'll see you next time.